If you missed last week, coming up, we got part two, the unwitting Uber driver being chased in a driveway by a crazed man. Was he a crazed man? The crazed man could also be seen as a scared and very easily manipulated elderly victim. I'm Drew Breezy, and this is the Comm Center. Even though John and I lent our expertise to this case in part one, we were both shocked and surprised at how this one ends. All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center.
Wake up, America. It's the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. It's a TV show on the internet about two best friends who are tasked by a small town sheriff to sit a rambunctious Labrador retriever. But in the end, just as you'd expect, the dog ends up sitting them. Also, the dog dies, and the boys have to cover it up for insurance reasons and also to protect the sheriff from emotional pain. I'm John. I'm an Action 911 dispatcher, if you can believe that. Joining me, as always, is your lieutenant in love and my podcasting partner with police benefits, Andrew Baxter, also known as his sobriquet, Drew Breezy. How are you doing?
I couldn't be better, John. The small town sheriff asks a lot of us, but we get
a small department. They know that he knows we can handle it.
Yeah, we get it done in 30 minutes in every episode, it seems like.
Or less, or it's free, right? Yeah.
Right, or it's free, right.
I think we should do the part where I do the business parts of the show. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, folks, this is a show on the internet. If you are watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you. If you wanted to hit like and subscribe, we always appreciate that. That's how you can let the algorithm know that what you have just heard pleases you.
Or that you've been slighted by.
Or that you've been slighted. But hit like and subscribe. We always appreciate that. If you're listening on Apple, and then no matter how fast you're driving or in which direction, just go ahead and look down from the window and pull out your device and leave a 5-star rating and review. We appreciate that. That helps us climb to the charts. On Spotify, leave us a 5-star rating. Always good. On Instagram, you can reach us at the Comm Center with carefully placed underscores. We always appreciate that. But of course, as always, if you wanted to reach out to us specifically, you could reach Drew at What Say Drew, and you could reach me at I Stand Correct on Instagram. I don't have a lot of Instagram followers, so I don't know why I constantly drop my handle, because I don't not even one person is adding me per week. So this will probably be the last mention of my Instagram existence. Also, we're still over on X, or also known as Twitter, at Comm Center Pod. Sometimes we broadcast over there. If that's your social media platform of choice, you should follow us over there, because there's some content being posted. Also, you can reach us at Facebook at the Comm Center. That's a great place to find us. One place that you will never be able to find us is TikTok. We have been permanently banned. They recently called me on the phone to advise me that, even though it's 5 weeks later, that we are still banned from TikTok. They're just letting me know that they're just too cool for school and that it will never be me. This is pretty much how I feel about them calling me. But Drew, we need to finish up the case from last week. If you don't mind, I'll give a quick synopsis of it so that it kind of catches the audience up to where we are. So, should I frame this from the 911 dispatcher, or should I tell it in real time? I'll just say what happened. So there's this guy in Ohio, Springfield Township, Ohio. His name's Bill Brock. Bill Brock is 61. Bill did not fight in the Korean War based on his age. Probably fought in Vietnam, though. But anyway, he's at home. He just happens to have $12,000 in cash. Somehow, he just has this lying around. Maybe this is normal for elderly people, but maybe it shouldn't be. But anyway, this guy calls him up from let's say Manitoba. That sounds fairly Canadian. And threatens him, saying, hey, your nephew down in Charleston has been in this bad car accident. And he's being incarcerated, and, you need to pay all this money to get him out of jail. And then Bill's like, this sounds like a scam, but I don't know about this. And this Canadian guy named Joseph or something else, really just keeps changing tactics, right? He's almost acting like a vending machine. He'll just keep smashing Bill's buttons until $12,000 in cash comes out. He's threatening him, saying, I've got drones surrounding your house. I've got people that are going to come kill you, hurt you. I want this money, and I want it now. Well, this Canadian mastermind, having spent the entire previous week binge watching Hitchcock films, decides he's going to send a patsy or a bag man, or this lady named Lolitha, who was really good at making Apple Brown Betty, unfortunately, sets her up as an Uber driver to go collect the package. Now, Lolitha doesn't know what's in the package, and she doesn't know that she's going to meet someone who's basically been psychologically conditioned to be angrier than a boiled owl by the time she gets there. So she shows up. She's like, I'm here for the package. And Bill Brock's just like, I'm so glad you got here. He whips out his 22, and she's scared. Understandably, you're just arriving here, and then some guy draws on you. Well, he chases her around and takes her cell phone away, which to me has to be like the meanest part, right? She can't even dial 911 to call help for herself. If she wanted to get authorities there to mediate this disaster, I'm sure she wanted the cops there just as bad as he did. He ends up shooting her several times, shoulder, leg, chest. She's in a lot of pain. She's not doing well. He decides, I'm going to go back inside. I'm going to dial 911 because on account of I just wasted this broad in my driveway. 911's understandably confused. They get him to put away the weapon. He explains something of what happened. Madison Township ambulance arrives just prior to police. The ambulance starts working on her. They take Bill into custody. They say he's not under arrest, but they pat him down, put him in the back of the squad car. All of a sudden, a sergeant on the scene and the deputies on the scene start talking about how Bill's mentioned that he's been the victim of a scam and he might have been set up to do this. So, but the weapon's still inside. No one's made entry into the house. Lolitha's leaving the scene. They do need an ambulance to look at Bill because in a brief scuffle, he had his ear injured, his head injured, and he has some blood on him. But we're going to talk about some of the legalities, like should they go in and get the firearm, and if not, why not? And when do we interrogate him and why? And do his statements against interest, are those admissible? And how far is Bill? How far is he liable for everything that's happened, given that he was set up to do this? So it's going to be an interesting for points of discussion. But Drew, I turn it over to you.
That's a great synopsis. I bid you to go back and watch the first episode of this because Jonathan broke down the 911 calls expertly. Like he I'm always proud to work with Jonathan, but he's or John, as you guys know,
either or.
But he went through the 911. We both went through the 911 call, and he's able to give that insight that you don't get anywhere else. You don't get on these other true crime shows. Okay, so there's that. Then we're going to go through this other thing. So because I could take you through the body cam, John can too, obviously, but I could take you through the body cam with my experience, and we could talk about the investigation itself. And then you're just not going to believe what happens at the end.
You won't believe it.
Yeah, it's just kind of shocking too. So
shocking twist.
Yeah, we left off at about the 12th minute. This is raw body cam footage that we use. I didn't do a whole lot to the audio, so you're going to hear a lot of wind, stuff, and you're going to hear the roar of diesel engines. John, I don't know what it is, but I have I cannot stand diesel engines. I cannot stand the smell of them. I don't know if it's from my Air Force days when I was in a combat ready unit, to be clear, when I was in the Air Force, and I don't know. It's just maybe but diesel makes me sick. But
it bothers me too, just because of the amount of time that I spent siphoning it out of vehicles. And I always eat the mint first. It's always a huge mistake.
Here's the deal too. Think about this. This guy. This is all about agriculture. You'll see that what we're calling code name Banana, with the pearl handle that's in his house in the crime scene photos. You'll see it sitting right next to a Case agriculture hat. So, this guy is into agriculture, obviously. Maybe he was farming. That's maybe where he gets a lot of his cash from. It's kind of known that people in that farming community tend to deal in a lot in cash and keep it in the mattress or whatever. If you'll notice also, and I think we'll play it, I think it's coming up, but when you open his door, right, the banana is right on the table to the left of the door, just where he said it. But when you open the door, you'll see like this big like company rug, and at the bottom of it, it says like Burke Brothers or something like that, whatever, or Brock Brothers, whatever his last name is. So I think I tend to think he was a business owner at some point. Maybe he's still part of the business or whatever.
Big rancher, maybe. Who knows?
That could be. So we'll just pick it up exactly where we left off. Again, you could go back and watch the previous episode. Jonathan edited it down for you, and it's well worth the watch.
So we need to tape it off? No, we're good. I mean,
so the first thing that guy asks, I think he's the lieutenant, maybe, but he said, "Hey, so do we need to take this off?" And the first on the scene, the deputy that arrived first, who's doing a phenomenal job of life, says, "No, no, no, no. I think we're good. Like, it's just us here. Like, there's really nobody to keep out of the crime scene."
If anything, we'd take the road off if media starts showing up. But we probably didn't close the road, really. Probably gonna land in the field.
Yeah, I think that everybody's. So he's saying that somebody called him and told him that
Sounds like a scam.
it is a scam, that he's got $12,000 in cash in there.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
It's the same play that they've been using on everybody.
Yeah.
It's always elderly people.
Yeah. I think it's pictures of his face.
I'm gonna run that tag and see what it comes back to.
Go ahead.
If this seems familiar, it's because it was in the last episode. I just went back a little bit.
Sergeant's asking where she was shot. Was it just like outside the door?
She was laying right here by that car, so I'm not sure. I haven't went up there. I was just waiting on him to get a search warrant. He's probably going to have to go to the hospital, so they'll imagine they'll want someone to ride with him.
I'll tell you, as an officer sitting in the car like that, when you got the bad guy in your back seat, it's a very uncomfortable feeling because everybody is curious and everybody wants their piece of this guy and everybody wants a crack at him. Even as a supervisor on a scene like that, because you don't want anybody really talking to this guy. Like,
Yeah.
you're trying to protect the investigation itself, and this guy's mentioned the word search warrant no less than 3 times already, which is phenomenal. Like, there's no exigency anymore. The scene is stable. Let's just slow things down and make sure that we do this procedurally correct so that the guy gets a fair trial and we don't violate any rules of evidence or whatever. I mean, that's the idea behind it. So the less people that ask him questions or talk to him, probably the more comfortable he is. But you still have everybody and their brother and their sister showing up asking questions. John?
Something that was interesting to me was, they told him that he was in custody, or they told him he was not in custody, just being detained. But obviously, he's already admitted to being the shooter. He's made certain statements against interest. I think there's probable cause to arrest him at this point. But something that's interesting, and his wounds are not that grievous, but sometimes police officers will make very tactical decisions about when to arrest someone with injuries, particularly like on an injury accident. If we are going to arrest someone and place someone in custody, we suddenly become financially responsible for their medical treatment. And so very often someone will be in custody and then, or at least detained, and then we'll find a way to finagle that so that the taxpayers aren't on the hook for their medical care. And I don't think that'll be the case with minor injuries like Bill Brock, but it's always something interesting to think about, that sometimes you have to call judges and get them to change their bond so that they're just bonding out on personal recognizance, because the county would end up paying more for that in the long run than they would be by getting his bond. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, truth be told, as a supervisor, I've had to make that decision on more than one occasion. We have somebody under arrest for a felony, and all of a sudden they start complaining of chest pains. Well, we can direct file that charge with the state attorney's office, and we'll call you an ambulance. We'll put you right outside here. You're free to leave. We'll make sure you get the medical care that you want. But if you end up going, you're on the hook for the bill. You're on the hook for the bill at the hospital and everything else. Obviously, if it's a legitimate medical concern, that's a part of business. It's a part of life.
Right.
But some of the considerations that the public probably doesn't think about is that when somebody feigns a heart attack just to get out of going to jail or prolong their trip to the jail anyway, or when somebody does something stupid, like is in this horrible bar fight and they get their nose split wide open, and they've committed a felony, well, we can charge that felony in the future. We have them identified. If we charge them now, just like you say, John, we're stuck with that person. So now not only are we paying for the bill, and not only do we have to make sure that they're medically cleared before we take them into our facility, because the medical staff is more than likely going to reject them anyway until they've been medically cleared. But we're on the hook to babysit that person, and sometimes you could sit in an hour, you could sit in an ER for 12, 14, 16 hours. Sometimes you need to coordinate relief. Sometimes deputies sit an entire shift just sitting there, babysitting this
It's
guy.
a huge waste of time for a certified law enforcement officer, to be
Yep.
honest.
Yeah, and you know, we had a procedure in place where we would call like overtime detention deputies and give them the opportunity for the overtime, but that was all coordinated through the jail, and they were losing people. You know, it's a hit or miss of whether people are available or not. So sometimes, you know, you just got to make this decision. Like, you know, if it's a no brainer, like if it's a domestic violence, DUI, something like that.
You don't have
Yeah, no way. You don't
discretion.
have a choice. Yeah, they're going to jail, and we're paying for whatever, you know, whatever they're doing. But
I love it when guys go to jail for a long time, and then that's when they decide for the first time in their lives that they're going to take care of their dental needs and things like that, all on the taxpayer's back. Very common.
Or how do I put this? There are some that identify as something else once they get to jail for.
Oh boy!
And there are some states that are saying, "Yeah, how dare you?"
Oh, there's some states that are saying that you're violating the Eighth Amendment by not making that readily available for them.
Right.
It's a whole thing.
It's a whole thing. All right, here we go.
His ear's pretty nasty.
Pretty good. Beat up.
Where's our layout? Our other layout.
It's down here.
I got it.
There you go.
Yeah, his ear and stuff is. The firearm should be right inside that door, but no one's been in there.
Oh, and there, between the house and the garage? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
We got a couple deputies that are talking to your neighbor right now, partner.
Oh, who's that?
One of our deputies talking to this lady across the street.
Oh,
What color gun was it?
And it's 22 pistol right inside that door right there, he said.
Oh, you don't have it with you? It's still inside?
It's still inside. He didn't have it on him. He left it in there and came out.
He said you had it. That's why I was like,
Nope. Until we got a search warrant or whatever for missing the shirt, I wasn't touching nothing. No, sir.
can you call
Once the detectives talk to you, then and if they tell me I can make that call for you, I will, bud.
All right, this is the fine line that you dance also when you've got a person in your backseat that, as you mentioned a minute ago, have detained but not under arrest. Everybody's under this misnomer that you get your one phone call because that's the way it was in the 70s or whatever. And yeah, you'll be able to use the phone once you get to the processing part of jail. But you don't get to dictate when you can use the phone and how you can use the phone. Now, the other part of the dance is that if he's a homicide suspect, which they don't know at this point, they know that he's been involved in a shooting. But if he's a homicide suspect, you tend to want to keep those people happy and talking. You don't want to turn them off for any reason. So if they're like, hey, you know, he's a scared old man in the back seat. Can you call my sister for me? And da-da-da. You know, the deputy rightfully says, hey, I'm more than happy to do that for you, partner. I got to wait for the detectives to come here and talk to you first. And we'll make sure that we'll make arrangements for you to get in contact with somebody. Like, just reassure them, put them at ease, but keep them talking. If you pull this, which I've seen a million times in the past, and I still don't understand it. If you pull this, like, no, shut the F up, or like, just sit back there and be quiet or whatever. If you treat everybody like it's an us versus them, you're not going to get anywhere communication wise.
No, you literally make the situation adversarial. That's how they always play it on TV, right? Law and Order, they always come at the suspects real hard. The oldest saying in the book, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Absolutely. So be nice to the perp.
all right.
Yep. They'll just want to talk to you for a few minutes, I'm sure. Ben, can you sit with him for a second? 74 for admin purposes. I'm gonna turn off my camera for just a few minutes and make a phone call. Yeah, I got.
Okay, I left that in there specifically so the public can see what happens when we do that. There are reasons for us to shut our body cams off. Sometimes that we just need to make a personal phone call that you don't have the right to hear. Sometimes we need to step into a restroom for, one or two reasons. And you certainly don't want to hear that. So there are reasons to shut the body camera off. And if it's in the middle of an investigation, you certainly want to tell into the body camera the reason why you're shutting it off, because there's going to be a gap in time there. You do that in recording, by the way, in audio recording when you're sitting there interviewing a suspect or interrogating somebody. But this guy says, "Hey, look, for administrative purposes, I want to step away and make a phone call. I'm going to turn it off." Sometimes it's a conference with your supervisors, and there are attorneys that argue that you shouldn't be shutting your body camera off. Then but we have outlined in our SOP. Well, we did. Other agencies are different. Everybody's different. But look, we're giving you insight into what's going on there. And the whole reason is for transparency. But there are times that we just need to have a private conversation. And that's just this might stir up a hornet's nest, and I'd like to get your take on this. But if your stance is that, well, you're a public official, I pay your salary, and I should know everything that you're saying every time. Okay, that's fine. Well, then why aren't teachers wearing body cams?
Beautiful. I love it. No, I feel the exact same way. If anything, we treat police work as being so important and so delicate that we need to have total transparency and total accountability for what these police officers are doing. We're at the point now where these body cams and this technology is getting cheap enough to where we could start rolling it out in school districts. And I think teachers, they should be held as accountable as anyone else if we're going to put this on police officers. And for those of you who are, rising to the defense of teachers, it's like, what do police officers have to hide? What do teachers have to hide? And frankly, this isn't even necessarily all about agendas or what's getting taught in schools or things like that. How often has it come out that teachers behave inappropriately with underage people? There's plenty of criminals right there who are teachers. And if the most important thing is protecting our children, whether it's from insane doctrine or whether it's from inappropriate behavior, I say the body cam is as good for the goose as it is for the gander. True.
What conversation could you possibly be having with a student? And we're getting way off on a tangent here, and I understand.
I like it though. It's a good tangent.
What conversation could you possibly be having with a student that is private between you two and the parents can't hear? Now, this is where it gets into the other aspect of it. And look, if kids are reporting abuse and stuff like that, I get it. But there's also established procedure for that. There's also public records laws that covers and protect that conversation. And so I guess the point is, like, everybody wants transparency and everybody wants all this stuff, and they didn't get what they thought they were going to get when they put body cams on cops. And sometimes that's the biggest savior. In fact, people have been criminally charged for telling one story, but the body cam revealing something else. And I think that it kind of proved what we were saying. If anything, it gave us a little credibility. There are times that, the agencies, I think, go a little bit too far and they use the body cam footage and, against the officer. I really don't think that's fair, but, it's just a different story for a different day. But I just, for the sake of discussion, that's why I left it in there. Sometimes you're going to have conversations out on scenes like that. You shut the body camera off, but you always kind of tell why you're shutting the body camera off.
Yeah.
His phone? His phone? No, I'm sorry.
All right, look, this is what I'm talking about. Take note. He's walking away now. Take note at the back of his vehicle. Where what's his name? Charles is. Where the old man is.
Bill Brock.
Bill. The old man is in the passenger side of the back seat. Okay. Look at the number of people huddled around the passenger side of the back seat. Now, again, they don't know that this is a homicide case yet because they're still trying to find a way to fly her out. I don't think she's deceased at this point. One. Two, this is as a supervisor where it used to drive me insane. Listen, how about this in the Miranda warnings? Has anyone at any time threatened, coerced, or promised you anything in order to induce you to make a statement? How about I was sitting in the back seat of a police car with my hands cuffed behind my back and blood dripping down my ear, and there were 5, 6 uniformed officers with their guns out standing there asking me questions. And it's captured on body cam. It doesn't even matter what the questions are at this point. He's drawn a crowd, and you don't feel like you're free to leave. Obviously, you're not free to leave in this case, but this is where the number of officers can have an effect on the coercion factor. And all it's really going to do, to be honest, is get those parts of the statements thrown out. A good attorney can probably get those thrown out, but those could be very pivotal statements. They could be like if he happens to say in one of these conversations, well, the bitch wouldn't listen. I shot her in the leg once, then I shot her in the chest. That's a pretty pivotal statement. That's enough to charge him with murder and all that other stuff. And if that gets thrown out, it's hard to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that his intent was murder without that statement, right?
Question for you, Drew.
Go for it.
One easy way to sort of, if you're a supervisor on scene, you're seeing all these police officers, and a lot of them are kind of standing around. A lot of them just got there and they thought maybe they were arriving to a more hot situation. Could you diffuse some of this, what at least might appear to be coercive presence of police? Could you diffuse this by just taking him from the scene, or are you not able to take him from the scene unless he's under arrest? Like, can you detain someone and transport them from their house at the same time without them being under arrest?
That would be a consent thing. I think in this instance, there's no problem with it whatsoever. He's a suspect at this point. I mean, he's admitting that he shot. The self-defense thing is, there's more than reasonable belief that he shot her and that she did not pose a threat.
He said so multiple times that he's the one that he said, I shot her on the phone, and he told the first deputy on the scene and he said, I'm the shooter. So, I mean, yeah, we have that going for us. On the other hand, Drew, as a field supervisor, you're lieutenant on the scene, you see a lot of these guys. Let's suppose a lot of these guys they're just deputies. Can you tell them just get the heck out of here? We got the scene secure. They said nobody's approaching the scene. You could even post them out on the road to close the road so that you don't have a lot of traffic nearby until the warrant comes through and the detectives coming in can do the search. But couldn't you tell a lot of these guys to just beat it, go 10-8?
Yep, absolutely. Probably not 10-8. Like, I would give them something to do, or even better, just like, there's always a leader of the bunch. So just grab the leader and pull them like, hey, come here for a second, and just shoot the breeze with them. Sometimes that cures the whole problem. Or maybe make it a teachable moment. Like, guys, let's break the little party
You
up.
guys look like a cadet review. Let's break it up a little bit.
There's there are probably medical people tending to him, and maybe this isn't all just cops standing around doing all this other stuff. It's just a point that I wanted to make. So also, this kind of came up last week, and I want to make sure that we address it this week. There are issues. There's case law here in Florida anyway. I'm sure it's Supreme Court that there's something on it. But when somebody is detained with handcuffs on, sitting in the back seat, do you think that you can sell a jury that they are giving consent to search their home under their free will?
No, I don't think so.
So this is why the guy keeps saying search warrant, search warrant, search warrant. They can get this old man's permission. There's no two ways about it. And I could finesse this guy into letting me in there. I can finesse him into signing the consent to search, which is, I think, ultimately what he did. But this is why, the search warrant is always the safest way to go. It protects his Fourth Amendment right, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it also protects our procedure, our recovery, and it shows that we're on the up and up. Like, we took this information to a judge. Writing a search warrant is really not that bad nowadays. You have to be very careful using a template on a laptop or something. But make sure you have proofread 2 and 3 times to make just to make sure there's not stuff from the previous search warrant in there, because that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's even gotten to the point where you could just email it to the judge, and you could do the swearing process, or there's ways for the judge to authenticate your oath and stuff like that. So getting a search warrant there on the scene, you could probably crank a search. I could have cranked one out in 15-20 minutes maybe. A
Yeah.
supervisor's got somebody higher than me would have to read it. They're going to have to turn it over to the state attorney's office. The state attorney is going to ask whatever questions they're going to ask, and then as a faction, the detective, the assistant state attorney, unless it's wee hours in the morning, we're all going to go to the judge together and say, here, this is what we're presenting as facts, and if you agree with it, will you sign the search warrant?
And meanwhile, the scene has remained completely unchanged. There's nothing here that's dynamic, nothing that's emergent.
Yep.
The police are not going to leave the scene. I've even had it before where there's an emergency like a fire, and there's also some suspicious criminal act going on, and the fire department can also maintain custody until they're sure that the structure is no longer a danger. Then they can turn it over to the police department.
Right.
There are ways of doing that as well.
They've involved code enforcement here where I work, where I used to work. Fire will turn it over to code enforcement to make sure that it's structurally sound before the investigators can go in. It's an all out effort. But the whole point was like, look, sometimes there's a reason to get a search warrant. It's safer, and it's more on the up and up. And by the way, it's easier to suppress somebody's consent and claim that they never gave you consent than it is a judge's order that says you can go in there and search and recover evidence.
Yeah, that shows that you've done your due diligence, that you've talked about everything that happened. Like Drew said, you had everyone in your command staff on board. You had the state's attorneys on board, and ultimately a fair and impartial judge agreed that you had probable cause to go inside a private residence and make searches and seizures. That's stuff that's going to be very, very hard for a defense attorney to throw out later because you went through the process. This guy, Bill Brock, even said to the deputy, he says, I'm sure glad you're here based off of everything that happened. So there's no adversarial relationship. He might feel comfortable with that. But we talked about this in the chats last week about how you can get his consent to go in there, or if you have some other reason to seize the firearm, but they don't. They have everything. They can just relax, stand pat, take that moment to breathe, and do everything by the book. So much about law enforcement is not only enforcing the law, but it's also protecting their rights. So although they're protecting their case at the same time, they're also protecting Mr. Brock's rights, even from himself.
It never ceases to amaze me. Again, here's a tangent where people are screaming about their Second Amendment rights, and then they say something like, well, I can't believe you can't just make him talk. And what's the difference between the Fifth Amendment and the Second Amendment? They're both amendments, and it's the same Constitution. So why are you so pro Second Amendment, but you're so like on the other side of Fifth Amendment?
However, they want to play it both ways. I've gotten into debates with people doing true crime podcasts that that they should just arrest someone on suspicion and hold them indefinitely, on that, and make all kinds of false arrests and do all these things without evidence to back it up, and say things. They'll say things to me like, everyone knows that he did it. And I'm like, and my response will be like, so I'm glad that police procedure is not based off of what everyone knows, because what you're talking about is mob justice. Like I've said a dozen times, everyone wants police officers to go out and enforce the law on everybody else. But when it comes to me, the police are there to defend my rights. And we have to realize that the person you're pointing the finger at, the person you're accusing, they have the same rights as you. And the police are fair and impartial as we want them to be. We don't want them to be the enforcers of the mob. And so they have to go out there and they need to enforce and protect Mr. Bill Brock's civil rights. That's what their job is. So their job is to get the warrant.
I just watched my wife and I watched a little mini series on Apple TV starring Jake Gyllenhaal. I can't remember the name of it. It's like Beyond a Reasonable Doubt. It's some court name. I strongly suggest you look that up and watch I think it's like maybe 3 parts or 5 parts or something like that. Very intriguing, very almost as intriguing as the ending of this episode.
Let's keep going.
Let me see if this.
And make sure she has no ID or clothing.
You got paper bags?
Yeah.
I got his house phone and ask him if that's his cell phone.
Do you mind if I go in your house? You don't want me to go in your house?
What do you want to go in there?
I gotta take pictures and everything, just of the area where it happened at, and we gotta clear it, make sure there's no one else in there. I'm not going in there to look or anything like that. All
The gun's in there.
right. That's what I'm going. That's what I need to go in there.
I saw mine just stay out there. I'm like,
Okay. Well, then we're going to get a search warrant. Okay.
nothing on the radio.
Because I have to go in there and get that gun.
It's like we heard nothing. I'm like,
Who are you?
She's a
I'm sorry,
detective.
I'm detective Sheila. I work with the sheriff's office. I'm sorry.
Big mistake on her part. So, I don't want to be critical of her, and I'll tell you, like, I don't think they did her any favors, because she's got this whole thing. It seems like there's one detective out there doing everything. She's kind of understandably running around like a chicken with her head cut off, which is another reason to keep people away from this guy. You've got 3 or 4 people standing around, and she's trying to talk to him. What she just tried to do was finesse consent, but she never even introduced herself. She never even said who she was.
What's interesting to me is that Mr. Brock's total disposition towards the police has changed. When that first deputy rolled up, he said, "I'm sure glad you're here because I've been threatened all day." Now that all these people have been standing around him, this person comes up and says, "I need to get in there. I need to take pictures," and goes like, "No, I don't consent to any of that. And who are you?" Now it seems very, very adversarial compared to that first contact. Go ahead.
It would seem that way, but once I just paused it at the wrong moment. Once she identified herself and said who she is and stated her intentions and took a deep breath and slowed down and spoke to him instead of speaking at him, I think he was a little more at ease. You get my drift here? Like, this is there's nothing wrong with holding your hand out saying, "Hey, I'm Detective so and so," and I think that they have overburdened her with all of the other stuff that she's doing. She's got a camera in her hand. You're gonna see something at the end that I'm like, you got to be kidding me that they got her doing that. Um, let's just keep going
And
because
she has time too, so why is she it's because a lot's been put on her plate, but she
yeah,
has time to do all of this stuff. She has time to do an initial interview. She has time, honestly, if they're going to be getting the search warrants anyway, she's got, like you said, 20, 30, 40 an hour to just take her time and introduce herself a little bit and ask him how his ear's doing and then walk away from him and then come back and then talk some more.
the other thing too is, she's like, well, we're going to get a search warrant then, which is like, okay. I mean, that's not a threat. That's not a
Yeah,
threat.
what is he supposed to do or say about that?
Like,
I mean,
okay, we'll go get a search warrant then. If you know you need to do it, then do it. Like, sometimes I would just be like, let's just get the search warrant. We don't even need to ask him for
you
consent.
don't need to tell them. Yeah, you don't need to. Yeah.
All right, here we go.
That's the reason I want to go.
I just see you mad.
No, you're fine. I didn't introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't introduce myself. I work with the sheriff. I just want to go in there and make sure there's no one else in there. Be safe, and then I got to go and take pictures and where it all happened.
Lucas,
You okay with that?
it happened.
I ran the plate. I can see if it's her.
Yeah, if you look at it, yeah, and I'll be able to tell you if that's the name.
I would keep a copy because these medics keep asking him questions.
Yeah.
But these medics keep asking him questions about this. Just
Great call. I can't sing the praises of this deputy enough. I don't know if he's just a seasoned veteran or if he was on in a larger agency first and now works in this area or whatever. But man, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he if you guys didn't hear him, he's expressing concerns that one of the EMTs or paramedics on scene is asking him questions about what's going on. A defense attorney could say, "Hey, well, the police are employing EMTs or paramedics as their agents, and anything that he would say to them during the course of talking to an EMT or a paramedic would also be excluded as fruit of the poisonous tree."
You know what else happens, John, a lot, and it's just human nature. The telephone game starts. So when the EMTs are asking questions for injury purposes to treat them, necessary questions, Sometimes that information gets relayed to a deputy on the scene. A deputy on the scene relays that information to a detective. It ends up in a search warrant as Deputy so and so told me that da da da, and it's all like second hand information from an EMT who said that I was just speculating that that's what he meant. Like, you know what I'm saying? That it's a very slippery slope. It's something very dangerous that you kind of need to watch out for.
I would just leave one of us with him.
You might have that go in there and look into that gun.
No, I don't. No, I don't. It's right. When dispatch told him to put it down, he said it right in that breezeway, right?
What if I go in there and just
No matches.
It'll come.
Oh.
Is that the house phone still ringing? Scammer still trying to call him?
Yep, that's exactly what that is. Could be Abby's phone, but yeah, that's a scammer.
He's not been Mirandized.
I know.
Okay.
So he mumbles under his breath. He's not been Mirandized. Because the detective is starting to venture into some certain areas.
Well, yeah, and we can argue that he's in custody. So if we start asking him direct questions about what's happened and his criminal culpability, it won't be admissible without Miranda. So they should stop asking him direct questions if he's in custody.
So he mumbles to the sergeant who's standing over, and then listen to what the sergeant says.
Hey, Sheila. Nobody's read him Miranda.
I know, that's why I didn't ask.
Okay.
So Sheila, the detective, says, I know, that's why I didn't ask him anything.
I can certainly stand there and let you ask questions as a medic in a medical diagnosis and listen to all your answers.
But no,
That's her, Loetha.
yeah, I was going to pull up her picture. Hey, if they transport him, which they probably are, you want somebody to follow, ride with? Can we get some direction out here?
No, we don't have any.
Okay. So that's the sergeant, and the deputy is getting a little frustrated because, again, the detective is probably overwhelmed. She seems not as seasoned as other detectives I've dealt with. I'll just put it that way. I'm not taking anything away from her. She may be phenomenal. But she's
She may have all the experience of just a road deputy, but she's just a plainclothes investigator. Dude. There's different standards of detective out
right.
here.
And so he says, he says, hey, Sarge, I mean, can we get some direction out here? Like, this is a crime scene. Let's treat it like a crime scene. And the Sarge is like, yep, you're right, but we got none. And this is another little dance that happens often, that a street supervisor has to sometimes intervene in an investigation to prevent a detective from making a mistake. And then it gets back to the detective supervisor, who is sometimes very territorial, like they know what they're doing. So there are times I've been on both sides of that. I'll be real honest with you. I've been on both sides of that. So
I'm concerned that the patient's still on scene. We still got both ambulances there. That's not a good sign. Where's the helicopter at? They haven't gone to the landing zone. I don't know if the fire department's been paged out to set up a landing zone. I don't know if the paramedics are working on her in the back, but they haven't left the scene. Normally something like this, a high trauma case, it's throw and go. Get her in the back of the ambulance and get out of there code 3, trying to get her to get her to more advanced life support than whatever's in that ambulance.
Great point.
Just follow. You don't have to ride with him. Well, actually, we don't have any 2 people cars. Nah.
Follow or ride with?
I would ride with in case he says anything.
That's what I'm thinking.
I would say ride with in case he says anything. Oh, okay.
No conversations. Right. Got 29 miles till empty.
I need gas. The motherfucking car's already to fall apart. I'm like, come on.
Well, these roads aren't the easiest.
No.
It's
And then, like,
and I don't know what's on the other side of some of these little hills.
Yeah,
so
there was one. I'm like, ooh, my GPS didn't show a sharp turn, and I'm like, oh shit.
I am.
Okay. So I'm like,
that's the reality of being a cop. Like there are like you're headed to the gas station, which is 10 miles out of your way, and you get a call that's 15 miles in the other direction. You're like,
I was gonna say, you guys are almost always out of gas. Do you know how often I'm having to hear from that somebody's at the pumps right now? It's very, very common.
I have literally run out of gas on a major.
We have had the sheriff in a pursuit once run out of gas. So I mean, it's just,
I don't think they're gonna move.
Steve, where's he at?
I'll talk about him.
Yeah, I'll tell him. Hey, Benny, can you follow them to the hospital?
Yeah.
Is this your guys?
No,
Hey, do you mind doing me a favor?
What do you need, bud?
Just no questions pertaining to the incident, if they don't mind.
Okay.
Just strictly medical.
You gonna follow, right? You gonna follow them?
They got it oral on camera, but
If he can sign it,
call.
we'll go ahead and get it signed real quick.
yeah, just make sure we explain it to him.
Yeah.
So
if
there's not.
If he refuses transport, you guys can still take him.
Yeah.
Going to the hospital.
There may be a reason.
the audio kind of cut out here, but they're still getting ready to take in Mr. Brock by ambulance. They're saying, hey, don't discuss anything about what happened with them. They just want to make sure that if he does make any statements against interest, that it gets caught up in the body cam by the deputy or the officer riding with him. But if you're asking him questions, again, you would have to Mirandize him, and they're not doing that at this point. It's premature.
We have lost.
Should there be audio here?
Yep. Oh, hold on a second. Maybe it's this thing. Hold on.
Did you take this from her?
I just grabbed it from her. She
Okay.
was given to her by advisor. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just write your name on there since you collected it.
Yep.
I don't think we missed anything. I'll upload the whole asset.
So when I got here, she was laying here, and he was standing back here.
So he was standing back there?
Yep, like right at the front of that car.
She was right here.
He was high.
Yes.
So here's the other body.
No, it's the 1778. It's that guy. You ready? Do we want him out? Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Hello?
Yes, who is it?
They're literally speaking to the scammer. He keeps calling. And that's how they determine. One of the deputies there ran the phone number, and it came back to Bell Canada, which is why I keep saying Canadian. We know that numbers can be spoofed. We know that Google can hand out numbers, however they see fit. I don't know exactly how it works across.
Means nothing, but at this point, Canadians are suspect number one.
Suspect number one, and they don't have the same constitution as us. First of
No,
all.
and we've done no actual thought or investigating. So at this point,
Right.
it's
But
Canada.
if you listen to his tone, or which is somewhat friendly, which is attracts, that's Canadian. But if you listen to his tone and his accent, you will hear what I hear, probably. And you'll be looking to the Tim Hortons.
May I ask you who I'm talking to?
Yeah, this is the officer speaking.
Okay, what officer?
Yeah,
No, I need to know what officer, sir.
you're gonna be in trouble.
Okay. Let me ask you this. The female you sent over here, you know who she is?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, she's been in an accident. And this is actually an officer. It's Detective Cruz with the Clark County Sheriff's Office. I need you to dial a number, get this number so I can explain more to you. Hello? Hello?
If you'd like to make a call, please hang
Well, they know that she's been in an accident, so they can't say we didn't tell them.
Okay. I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to be critical of the detective. I don't know if she's listening or if she ever hears me or if she
Came on a little strong. It might have been better to play this guy's game for a while.
I'm fine with how she handled that part of it. I mean, I think she was a little nervous in talking to him, and that's understandable. Like, you got to keep the guy on the phone. We traced the call. He's coming. It's coming from that. She said the trigger words in the due diligence world. When you're around me and you say something like, well, they can never say that we didn't try, or, well, they can't say that we didn't give her a pamphlet because we did. And what you're doing is you're doing things procedurally to keep somebody off of your back. And it's your intention just to cover your behind. There are things in this profession that you're going to have to do cover your behind. I get that. How about 90% of the things you do, though, you do with intention to solve the case? And don't worry about what your supervisors say. Because I'll tell you, from a leadership standpoint, John, I'm on a full-on soapbox now. When a supervisor would tell me, well, what are you going to do if they ask blah, blah, blah? I would say 100% of the time, I'm going to answer them. That's very simple. And I'm going to appeal to their common sense when I answer them. And if they don't like my answer, I will do as they wish. But this whole business about they're going to ask or it kind of implies that you don't think for yourself. You're thinking this is how they're going to want it investigated. That's your investigation, not theirs. You're responsible for it. They're ultimately responsible for you, but you're responsible for the investigation, so you need to take ownership of it. So don't, I mean, I know what context she was using it in. She was like, well, they can never say that we notified them. Who's going to ask you, first of all? And
Yeah.
second of all, why are you afraid of that?
I mean, at some point, you hope to actually be discussing the case with this guy's attorney. If you get to that point, you're way ahead of where you are right now.
Yep. Don't fear it. Just take it by the stones. And, I'm not knocking her, because the way law enforcement is set up right now, we unfortunately have to worry 85 to 90% of the time about the administration, and then 10% about the time about the people that have guns and other things. Like, that's the stress of being an officer right there. I'll tell you that. She's got a camera in her hand, a phone in her hand. She's trying to gather information on a shooting that I don't know if she knows yet is about to turn into a homicide. She's got all kinds of stuff going on. There's an actual scam artist that she's got on the phone. She's spread very thin here, but she's worried about in case they ask. Don't ever say in case they ask around me. That's the worst thing you could ever say. You're going to get the same lecture over and over again. Anything else, John?
No, go for it.
Okay.
Shit, how you put on speaker?
That speaker thing right there.
Right here?
Yep. Hello.
Yes, I'm sorry, we got disconnected there.
Okay.
What were you saying?
She was in an accident. This is Detective Cruz with the Clark County Sheriff's Office. She was taken to the hospital. I need you to call so we can get more information on her.
Okay, what type of accident?
It was a serious accident. We'll just say that.
A serious accident?
Yes.
Is she okay?
No, she's not doing well.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
She just say she was taken to the hospital.
What hospital is she
I'm
at?
not going to tell you that until you meet me so I can make sure you're family or something like that.
Okay, I'm going to be there, give me 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Where is the gentleman that was there?
Huh?
The gentleman that was there, where is he?
He's talking to us, so I need you to come.
Okay, thank you. I'll be there.
20 minutes, get ready. Let's see if he shows up.
Yeah, right.
Do we think he's coming here?
Says
He
it
said
is.
that he's coming here.
20 minutes.
Oh, guys. Oh, guys. Like, he says he's coming here. He'll be here in 20 minutes. Like, yeah, I mean, there's if there's anything beyond a 0.0001% chance that you believe that he's actually going to show up there, you need to read.
I mean, let's play devil's advocate, right?
Yeah.
Guy's not showing up. We know that. But what if he did? Like, you wouldn't want to be caught by surprise by that, right?
Hello, I'm the
What
one.
if the guy, there's so much stupidity in this world, Drew. This guy shot, case in point, Bill Brock shot an Uber driver because he thought that someone was extorting him. This woman was never threatening him. She didn't have a gun. She's clearly just a patsy. I mean, Bill Brock shot her. So, I mean, this case is stupid enough. There's enough stupid to go around. This guy might show up. And I think you're a pretty bad cop, bad detective if your suspect shows up and you are not ready to talk to him or apprehend him or whatever is necessary.
Yeah, like, what are you going to do? What if you're planning on that, how are you going to make use of your time for the next 20 minutes? Are you going to process the scene like you're doing now? Or are you going to sit down and review the case so you have enough to talk to him about? Because he's potentially a scam artist, one, and two, could be responsible for a felony murder, which you may or may not know yet. But at a minimum, you have some type of culpable negligence because you're responsible for that old man's behavior in a sense because of what they did, because of what he did to carry it out. So
How come she didn't just straight up ask him, like, do you mind if I ask your name? Like, who is this? I mean, would that just be too pointed a question? I mean, because we know he's not going to show up, right? We know that. And we know he's not actually going to answer the question of who is this, but why not ask? You know what I mean?
controlled phone calls, John, that's what they're normally called. Controlled phone calls are just that. It's total. You have total control. It's not you and two cops standing around on speakerphone while somebody's asking how to put it on speakerphone. Look, again, I'm not.
They didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this. I mean, the mere fact that the scammer's still calling is amazing because a significant amount of time has passed.
And I'm still giving them the benefit of the doubt that they don't know how serious this case is. They don't, you know what I mean? This could be like, oh, he just shot her a couple times in the leg and the shoulder. Everything's fine.
It's only a flesh wound.
Yeah,
She's had worse.
Yeah, it could be.
There is an extra fitting.
All right, so this is one of the things I wanted to point out. Do you see what I see on this in the red circle there? She, and we'll see when he walks a little bit closer, has gloves on. She's stooped, on her knee, bent on her knee behind the car, the victim's car, by the way. And she's digging into like a tackle box, which is normally a scene processing kit, a print kit, DNA, whatever. Maybe that's where you keep your SD cards and stuff for your camera and stuff like that.
Your CDs, yeah.
She's full on responsible for fingerprinting, processing the scene. I mean, that's the impression I'm getting here. Photographing it, conducting the interviews with the suspect, making a determination on the charges. That's why I say she's overloaded. It's not necessarily her abilities, it's anybody's abilities with a case this serious. You've got to spread the responsibilities out, and then at the end of it, when it's time for a trial, come together. Now they don't know that there's a trial coming because they're probably of the it's self-defense mindset here, but I don't know. I just
even with self-defense, there could still be a trial, and even with nothing else, I mean, all of your stuff is still going to fall under scrutiny. Always presume there's going to be a trial, even if it's only a civil case in which your stuff's going to be subpoenaed. You still want that stuff to look good.
Sure, and I will readily recognize that this agency might only have 5 or 10 officers or detectives or deputies or whatever. So what I'm talking about is a luxury, but is
this the lady that had to work the fair?
It's very possible, dude. I really think that I think it might be the detective, but it's also just kind of like there are state agencies or there are neighboring agencies or whatever. Like I don't know if they use them to help out or who makes that decision or whatever, but you really want to see justice for the victim, and then you also have the side topic of there's actually another victim in this who is about to be a suspect. And you have his rights to protect too, because if you want a full on conviction for what is about to happen, I mean,
Yeah.
all right. So I kind of left that in there. I think that probably sums it up. I don't think I have anything else.
St. Hillsborough County, that's for sure.
Definitely in Hillsborough. That's and that's fine. Like I get it. I mean, I come from a very big department. What's your initial reaction here, John?
I find the whole thing very sad. I think most people would agree that it's sad. I think most of us have mixed feelings about Bill Brock, right? This guy was, in a sense, he was an innocent guy. He's someone that, you know, he's just older. He's someone that you can exploit. But he behaved recklessly. He behaved stupidly, you know, for no reason. This woman approaches him, doesn't pose a threat to him. He never had to come out of the house and address anything with her, but because he's worked up into this frenzy, he's at once angry that, you know, she's putting the muscle on him, which of course Lolita was not, and also terrified. You know, it'll be interesting to see how the defense really makes this case. Was he scared? Because if he was scared of drones and being attacked or whatever else, why did he go outside? Why did he chase her around the car when she was screaming to anyone to help? You could see that across the street from him is like an ethanol plant or something. Like there's no neighbors out there. Like I live where this guy lives. There's no one that can really hear her. I know there was one neighbor that said she knew who Bill was, but she's out there on her own. There's no way that she poses a threat. How do you claim self-defense when you're inside your own house and then you're coming out with a gun to something that's not clear and present danger? In a sense, Bill's a victim of this other guy that I'm sure never showed up. And it's just various degrees of victimhood. Obviously, Lolita, the clear loser here, but even Bill too. The idea, I would feel terrible for him. The idea that he's going to go to prison for 10 years, for 20 years, or anything that's going to happen to him, because he was duped. But he's still liable for pointing at a gun at a woman for no reason and firing at her like 5 times.
Right.
I want this guy that's calling people up and being a fucking parasite and trying to get people out of their hard-earned money, $12,000 in cash, setting people up to meet each other with guns. I want that guy.
I agree.
Cut a deal to Bill Brock if only we could find this guy who was on the phone, Drew.
I wholeheartedly agree. I don't know that, you know, I know that the whole community was in an uproar just based on some of the comments I was reading. I mean, like that man flat out murdered her and all this other stuff. And they're really not taking into account his frame of mind. It's a hard sell that based on what he was saying when she was walking around the car yelling help, he was like probing her as in, who do you work for? You ain't leaving here. Like he was doing his own investigation, in other words. So yeah, I do think that he was in fear. I do think that he believed that there were drones, and I do think that she was in on it. And that's what caused him to do what he did. But he can't do that. The big surprise was the charges. The charges included murder. As you know, he's been charged with murder and also 2 counts of I just had it up here, John. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. I can start naming football names if you want.
Okay, so he was previously arraigned on a murder charge for purposely causing Lolita Hall's death. On Monday, a grand jury indicted him on that charge, as well as 2 new counts of felony murder. And they also added a count of kidnapping and felonious assault.
Oh boy, they hit him real hard.
They hit him really hard. So, and sometimes that is done so that there's a little bit more bargaining power.
They can give up some stuff during a plea. Yeah, like I could see them dropping the kidnapping charge pretty early on.
Sure. So what? Let me ask you, John. What case does that remind you of the most? Like, of all
were they pile stuff on?
No. Well, I mean, you know, Hannah Payne. That was a good one. So, of all of the cases that we've done, where should we point the listener to watch next?
You tell me, Drew. You know all the cases so
No,
well. I never listened to this show, so
I think that this is very similar to Hannah Payne in the sense that it's a complicated case, and there are many twists and turns. One, but two, there are a lot of charges that, in my opinion, are overcharged. And in contrast, she was at the sunrise of her life. He's at the sunset of his life. So I think if we're going to put up a card here for you to look at the Hannah Payne playlist. If you haven't seen that yet, give it a shot.
yeah. Even if you just watch the first one and the last one, that the bookends of it are even just those two. We'll show you kind of how do you start and how do you end, and you don't get to see the transformation because, like in episode 4, like I'm telling Drew that he's a fool, and then I'll defeat him. I'll defeat him intellectually and all this, and then then we swapped places, and then he was kind of coming at me, and it was a beautiful journey of angst and consternation all summer long. I miss it already, to be honest.
I think I miss it too. I think,
but luckily we're just at the first of a 10-part series of Bill Brock versus Lolita in the driveway. So join us back here next week and each and every week for another episode of driveway death. Oops, not allowed to say that word on YouTube.
Yeah, Pete Rose.
Pete Rose. Ndamukong Suh.
God bless you. Pete Lecoq.
Quentin Jammer.
Jammer, I hardly know her.
General Booty.